Hey young people, welcome back to week 1, day 1 of Latin 1. Today we're going to learn about the imperfect tense. So far, we haven't talked about tense very much. The only time we've really talked about it is you do some kind of translation, especially on a test, and you render a sentence like this. You'll write down, Mars loved Rhea Silvia. And I'll do something like this. I'll circle this verb, and I'll write tense above it. And I'll also do this, -1. You just lost a point for that. But what did you do wrong? Well, so far, you only learned one tense, and that tense is the present tense. Loved is not present tense. It should be Mars loves Rhea Silvia. In fact, that's the only option you have at this point, because that's the only thing you know how to translate in Latin. Today, you're going to learn another tense, the imperfect tense. If you think about the idea of tense, in English, you're usually taught that there are 3 tenses. Take 10 seconds to think about what those 3 tenses are. Good. You probably said for your 3 tenses something like the past and the present and the future. This is what you learn starting in elementary school. There are 3 tenses, past, present, future. It's really not that simple. Most grammarians, they argue that there are at least a dozen tenses. I've seen one list with 17 discrete tenses in English. Latin, on the other hand, only has 6, and you could categorize each one of them as either past or present or future. But the imperfect tense falls into one of these categories, but it's a little complicated. The word imperfect comes from imperfectus. Now you might imagine, imperfect, well, that means flawed, not correct, something is wrong. In Latin, imperfectus simply means not complete. So if you create a timeline like this, right in the middle, you have what's happening right now, the present tense. Off to the right, you have forms of the future tenses that we'll learn about later. The imperfect, being not complete, occurs back here. And there are 2 different ways to think of the imperfect. It's either incomplete action in the past. So to represent this, rather than doing an X, how about this? I'll do an X and a dotted line, and then it gets cut off. Draw a little pair of scissors down here. It gets snipped, and all of a sudden, it comes to an end. The other use of the imperfect is used to indicate repeated action, also occurring in the past. So to indicate that, you can draw a bunch of X's. It happens over and over and over again. Even though these are all happening in the past, or happening before now, these would be considered imperfect in concept. Take a look at your yellow sheet. If you don't have your yellow sheet, you can use a sheet of notebook paper like I've been using, or you can print out the grammar file. I'll post this on Edsby so that you can create your own. It doesn't matter if it's not yellow. Will live. But I do want you to have a physical copy of this. How do you actually form the imperfect tense in Latin? Go to the back of your paper where it says verbs. Go down to the section where it says imperfect active. Or on your blank sheet of notebook paper. Just start writing. To form the imperfect active, you get the stem of the verb, and you combine it with these two letters, B and A. This is an example of something we call a tense sign. Some tenses in Latin have a tense sign. A lot of the time, they don't. So, this tense, you can count yourself lucky. All you need to do is find these letters BA, and you instantly know that the verb is imperfect. And then, because this is active voice, you have the active, personal, ending. Let's fill this in, color code it, and then we'll translate it as the last step. If we're using AMO, I'm going to write AMA for all of these. Then I'm going to write BA is my tense sign. And then I'm going to put in the personal ending. Remember your personal endings for verbs, all the way back to chapter 2. Most, must, isn't. So O or M, S, T, must, tis, ent. And you end up with a make around here, here, and here. For the first person singular, what do you think the ending would be? An O or an M? Well, I'm going to show you the wrong way. I'll go back to this paper here. If we did this with an O, it would look like this. Ama, ba, o. The Romans did not like that vowel combination, that A-O ending. How would you even say this? Amabao. Amabao. A and O don't even form a diphthong in Latin. Like an A and an E makes an I sound. They don't combine well in Latin. You might notice an exception to this. There's a name of a character in the last chapter. We studied him. He was in the Aeneid in one of the translations we did last chapter. And he violated this sort of quasi-rule. He had an A and an O back-to-back in his name. If you can remember his name, leave it in the comments and earn 20% extra credit. He was a character who had an A-O combination in his name. Anyway, back to this. So it can't be Amabeo or Amabao. So your other option is M. Amabam. This isn't necessary, but a lot of students find it helpful. I'm going to go through in color code about highlighters. So we'll do the stem in blue. We'll do the active personal ending, and I'm going to do it in orange because the blue and the green look almost identical on yellow paper. So MST, must, tis, ent. And then, the most important part, I'll do in hot pink, BA, bom, bos, bot, bombos, botis, bont. And that's how you would say this. I'm a bomb, I'm a boss, I'm a bot, I'm a bombos, I'm a botis, I'm a bont. How would you translate this? Well, remember what we said. The imperfect indicates incomplete or repeated action. So, okay, repeated action. We could take, for example, the idea of going to school. You've gone to school over 100 times this year. So you could say, I kept going to school every day. I would go to school every day. Those would capture the essence of the imperfect tense. But then you also have incomplete action, something that was cut off. So you might say something like, I was going to school every day until Corona 2020 struck. That's usually the best way to translate the imperfect. It captures the most possible options and scenarios. So I want you to remember the translation is was or were verbing, whatever the verb happens to be. I'm a bomb would be I was loving. I'm a boss would be you were. Well, let's put ditto marks for loving. I'm a bot is he or she or it was, and I'll just put ditto marks for loving. I'm a bombus. We were loving. I'm a botus. You all. Ditto mark, ditto mark. I'm a bot. I'm a bont, excuse me. They were loving. For the imperfect passive, I already wrote the basic paradigm up here. Again, it's a stem plus BA, and the only thing that changes, rather than being the active personal ending, if it's imperfect passive, use the passive personal ending. So, let me drop my stem and tense sign down again. And then, instead of OMST must have set, R, RIS, TER, MER, MINI, enter. And there needs to be a make run there, and there, and there, and there. Let's color code. BA should be pink. And personal ending will make orange. Okay. Now, same thing, but make it passive voice. So instead of I was loving, I was being loved. You were, and then I'll just put little marks in, being loved. He or she or it was, ditto mark, being loved. We were being loved. You all, ditto mark, we're being loved. They, ditto, we're being loved. Your assignment for today is however you transcribed this, whether you did it on your yellow sheet or you used a piece of notebook paper, or you printed out this file and recreated it, take a picture of this right here. If you get the information page around it, that's fine as well. It doesn't make any real difference. Just capture that you wrote down the imperfect, active, and passive, the paradigm, and you filled in the chart form. There will be a quiz on this on Thursday of this week. But for today's lesson, here's really all you need to know. The imperfect tense indicates incomplete or repeated action. The stem letter, or pardon me, the tense sign are the letters B, A. And it translates as was verbing or were verbing. If you need to fill in your chart still, if you didn't do it as I was going through it, you can pause here and use this screen to fill it in. Thank you. See you later.